This waterway is powering the rivalry between China and the US. Because the Panama Canal is crucial to global trade, both are craving a piece of it. China has been investing in Panama, but it was the US that built the canal and ran it for decades. And now, wants back in.
War! Dragons! War! Dragons!
But people in Panama do not like this idea.
Por favor, no jalemos a Panamá un problema de dos gigantes que no nos toca.
So let's look at how Panama and its canal got caught up in this competition. Your next smartphone or your next outfit could be passing through here, the Panama Canal. It's a shortcut between two oceans. We're talking weeks shorter than going all the way around South America. And that's especially important for the United States. Most of these ships are heading to, from, or between US ports, making the US the #1 user of the canal, by far. That might explain why Donald Trump is so obsessed with it.
China is operating the Panama Canal, and we're taking it back.
Mentira, total. Lo que está buscando es robarse el canal de Panamá por los beneficios económicos que el canal implica en este momento.
This is Euclides Tapia from the University of Panama.
Paralelo a eso, irrumpe China. Y eso le da todavía mucho más valor económico al canal.
China is the Panama Canal's second biggest user. When ships use the canal, they always pass these two ports. Both ports are operated by Hong Kong-based company CK Hutchison, meaning they could theoretically come under Chinese government influence.
The Panama Canal was built by Americans for Americans, not for others.
Where did that come from? The Panama Canal, and even the state of Panama, might not exist without the US. Time for a trip to the past. The US helped Panama break away from Colombia in 1903. The deal was simple. We'll support your independence, and you give us the rights to build and operate the canal.
Panamá nació como un protectorado de los Estados Unidos.
The US took over a failed project from the French. But it was mostly people from the Caribbean who actually did the dangerous work. The Panama Canal wound up being one of the most expensive construction projects in US history. And it wasn't just US built. For decades, the Panama Canal Zone was effectively US territory, with US military facilities on both sides. The American way of life was on full display. And if there was any doubt about who was in charge, the events of 1989 put Panama in its place. Panama's military dictator, Manuel Noriega, turned against Washington. The result? The US invaded. Noriega was sent to a US prison for drug trafficking. Hundreds of civilians were killed during the invasion.
The history of the canal has been very controversial. I think that there's always been some clashes in certain segments of the society. There's been some anti-imperialism, anti-US sentiment.
This is Maria Fernanda Bosmoski. She works for the Atlantic Council, a US think tank. But in 1999, Panamanians were finally celebrating. For the first time in history, Panama had complete control over the Panama Canal.
Estados Unidos devolvió a la República de Panamá todo, la tierra, el canal, todo, absolutamente todo. O sea, Panamá recuperó su soberanía en todo el territorio nacional.
There's even a monument reminding Panamanians of the historic handshake that paved the way for sovereignty. But the treaties Panama and the US signed came with a catch. The US potentially has the right to intervene in Panama if it considers the canal security at risk. Even after the US pulled back, it kept a foot in the door. So did that leave an opening for China? Like many places, Panama City has a Chinatown. Its archway was renovated in 2016. But what's interesting here is that Taiwan helped pay for the renovation, not China. For decades, Panama had diplomatic ties with Taiwan. Because in the world of diplomacy, you can only pick one. And in 2017, Panama suddenly ditched Taiwan and picked mainland China.
So I think Panama did the right thing.
This is Huyao Wang. He heads a Beijing think tank and is a former advisor to the Chinese government.
It has nothing to do with China doing investment, non-investment, or anything to do with that. It's just because Panama followed 184 countries to recognize China as the sole legitimate government of China.
The move came shortly after Panama became the first Latin American country to join the Belt and Road Initiative, China's global infrastructure project. And Panama got a big diplomatic reward. China's president, Xi Jinping, visited Panama and its canal in 2018.
Ellos llegaron tarde, muy tarde. La relación con Taiwán era muy estrecha. Entonces ellos necesitan invertir mucho en lograr que la opinión pública panameña los apoye, a pesar de que es un país que no respeta los derechos humanos. Los panameños lo saben.
China has definitely stepped up its soft power efforts. It opened a Confucius Institute to promote the Chinese language and culture at the University of Panama and started offering scholarships for Panamanians to study in China. China has recently been investing more in Panama, also here at the canal. There are only 3 bridges that cross the waterway. A 4th is now being built by Chinese state-owned companies.
Physical infrastructure is their way of getting into the region. It's an excuse for the Chinese regime to expand its footprint in the region, and that's of concern to the United States.
China is helping the local development. China is building the infrastructure. I see China only bring the economic benefit.
Remember these 2 ports that are operated by a Hong Kong-based company?
The concern is China using the ports for other non-commercial reasons, using these as military assets in some ways, having access to, controlling infrastructure. They could block the transit of cargo ships if they wanted to.
And the US sought to act on its concerns.
Just today, a large American company announced they are buying both ports around the Panama Canal.
CK Hutchison wanted to sell the ports to a consortium led by US investment firm BlackRock. But suddenly, China intervened, wanting to get its state-owned company, COSCO Shipping, involved.
So I think, China being the largest trading nation in the world, Chinese shipping company also one of the largest in the world. I think it's only natural if China gets involved on some of that.
And then Panama also made a move. Its regulators said there was something wrong with the port contracts in the first place. Panama demanded a new contract with a bigger say for them. So trying to make it clear who is in charge.
Peleen su problema en Washington o en Beijing, pero no en el patio panameño.
But the US has set foot in Panama again.
War! Dragons! War! Dragons!
When President Trump says we're taking back the Panama Canal from Chinese influence, that involves partnership with the United States and Panama. And we're grateful that they've welcomed U.S. troops on Panamanian soil by invitation.
Remember, the US used to control all these military installations next to the Panama Canal. Now US troops are back. By signing an agreement with Panama, the US gained access to these 3 bases. So US troops on the ground can now use them to operate near the canal. And they've done so recently, in joint exercises with Panamanian security forces. But the increased US presence reminds people in Panama of past US interventions.
Se está prácticamente entregando la patria con estos acuerdos que se firmaron, que no fueron consultados con el pueblo.
Nuestro canal es para todo el mundo, para un comercio totalmente mundial marítimo. Y eso es lo que tienen que entender. Nosotros queremos nuestro país soberano.
El gobierno se dio mucha presión, fue extremada. Ellos vinieron aquí con barcos, aviones, helicópteros, personal militar, a amedrentar al gobierno, como en la época de la colonia.
So where does all that leave China?
El cambio ha sido drástico. Por el momento no tienen posibilidades de seguir influenciando en Panamá. Los vínculos entre Panamá y los Estados Unidos son demasiado estrechos. No solamente históricos, sino militares, culturales y de cualquier tipo.
A really big win for the US? Panama pulled out of China's Belt and Road Initiative.
So I think that the United States has been effective in achieving its goals and interests in Panama.
For now, Panama seems to have given in to US pressure. But China claims it remains open for business.
I'm sure there's so much to collaborate between China and Panama and Latin American countries, like we did already.
Panama will have to continue navigating between the superpowers to keep its canal open for all of us.